All right, let's do this. Please welcome to the stage, D. Bradley Baker.
Hey, y'all.
Oh, that's my. Can I sit there?
Sure.
You sit there?
I sit right here.
Oh, fabulous. Well, thank you.
Me and Michael. Yeah.
Hanging out.
Having a chat.
So I just got to ask you, I mean, you've done hundreds of voices. How do you go about keeping them separate? How do you bring a character to life? How does that happen?
Well, a lot of the fun of voice acting, which is a certain kind of acting, is it's improvisational, and there's a lot of variety. And so you get used very quickly to using your imagination to conjure all kinds of different characters. The professional contract, the union contract, essentially gets you 3 voices for the price of 1. That's part of the value that a professional voice actor brings to the session. And so you're kind of being trained and being selected for to have a variety of characters and to be able to switch characters up and to change them a lot. And so that was sort of the gym that I was working out at when the Clones finally came around, and then finally the Bad Batch. And that was, it kind of took it to another level in terms of being asked to do numerous characters, but to keep them all clear and distinct within the story, so they all feel like they're different entities, different characters. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it's just kind of the line of work selects for variety of characters, which is kind of a function of acting.
Have you always done voices like growing up just for fun?
I always liked performing. I liked doing musicals. I liked being on a stage, but I never thought of myself as an actor. I think what it was is I didn't think of myself as like a stage actor. Although I enjoyed doing that very much, I didn't really want to study acting. I just wanted to do acting. I wanted to do performing and stand up and improv and open mic night stuff and just kind of singing, choirs, just having fun on a stage performing. That's kind of how it came together for me, was through all of that.
So do they show you a picture and say, what voice is this? Or do you have something kind of that you say, if they give me something like this, I have a voice ready?
Yeah, it's different for every project. Sometimes if it's more straight ahead, you just get a script and you look at the script and you can kind of see what they're going for, because usually it's clearly written, it's well written, and it's pretty clear what needs to be done. If it's something where we've got a creature or an animal or something where we don't know what we want, in that case, because they kind of know me for doing the weird stuff, the animals, the creatures and all of that, is that they'll show me a picture, a painting, some kind of rendering, and then there may be a little bit of workshopping of the sound of the character. And then once that's established and we know kind of the tone of the show because of the script, then we can release that character into the wild, so to speak, and you can do the performance.
What do you think what character you've done is closest to your real voice?
The character closest to my real voice, I'm probably somewhere between Perch Perkins and Tech. So yeah, Tech is very close to my regular voice. And Perch Perkins Action News is too, so that's kind of in the zone there for my regular voice.
So you worked on Star Wars Clone Wars, Last Airbender. I mean, that's pretty iconic stuff. Is there a particular role from those that really stands out for you?
It's hard to choose from your children, and those are particularly wonderful projects. The Airbender series. I always say I'll never be in a better show than that, but I feel the same way with the Bad Batch as well, and the way that the Clone Wars played out. But to choose, I can't very easily choose favorites from all of the things that I've done in those.
But say, for example, how do you keep your voice I mean, this is a valuable instrument to you. Do you have a certain regiment, gargling, a certain, diet, vocal exercises?
Yeah, right. The voice is a muscle, and it's a finite muscle. There's only so much that you can do with it, and just like if you're running track or something, that you can damage yourself, you can damage the muscle. So part of your training as an actor is just to perform a lot. Then you can get training, vocal training, for how to produce a sound and a performance that is powerful, but that is relaxed, that is sustainable, yet still compelling. And when I worked in Orlando about half my life ago, I took singing lessons from an opera singer who showed me a lot about doing just that, to find a relaxed but powerful placement for my voice. And then from there, I also had a good improv experience working with SAC Theater in Orlando, doing shows with like Wayne Brady and the like, where I learned how to improvise. And so when I combine those together with lots of live performing, good singing and vocal training, and then plus my improv experience too, that led me down a path of doing a variety of things with my voice that I never would have expected to do.
Do you have a recorded library, a personal recorded library of voices for you to call back on? I mean, there's so many, or do you keep them up here?
I remember a lot. In a way, when you create a character, if you do it right, it's fully realized, and it's like you've built a campsite at a particular stream, and you set the campsite up because of the consideration of where the sun is, where the river is, the road is up here, the forest is over here. Over here is a slope that you probably want to avoid, and there's just kind of this three-dimensional reality to this character that you've created, so that when you come back to it, as you do for camping, that's my metaphor, is when you come back to a campsite, you say, oh, I remember this place. Yeah, we need to put the tent here. The tent needs to face this way. The fire will go over here because of how the wind goes. And so that's how a character feels. Oh, my microphone seems to be going in and out. But that's how a character feels to me, there's a familiarity. And if I don't remember it, which happens sometimes, then the engineer will always have a reference to play for me.
So with voice acting, I mean, honestly, the animal noises, all the crazy noises, that's a different universe. A lot of voice actors don't do those wild animal voices, noises. Did that come first, or did the voice acting? I mean, did it just happen?
That's a good question. Yeah, for me, the acting comes first. I had a lot of performing in front of a live audience kind of experience. The weird stuff came later. That came from doing stand-up and doing improv and finding out what I liked to do, and realizing that, having watched a lot of monster movies and played video games and watching lots of Jacques Cousteau and animal documentaries, those were also part of my education, that I was ready to filter through the lens of acting to make creatures and monsters and animals. And to me, that's not a sound effects gig. That's an acting gig, because if all you need is like a simple eagle cry, then you can use a library. But if you need that animal to act, if you need it to interact, to listen, to respond with intent, then you need acting. And so it's a variation of acting, even when I'm doing a character like Eagly in Peacemaker, or Nubs in Young Jedi, for instance, but that something very specific is being said. So it's acting, it's not just sounds.
Nice. So I got to ask you, you mentioned video games. Is doing voice work for video games much different than doing it for animation?
Voice acting for video games is a lot more work for a lot less money. It's a longer session. You're probably by yourself for this longer session of doing many, many more lines with lots of more variation to those lines, and there's no back end, as we say. There's no residuals because of the contract is structured that way. So it's more work, but it can be a lot of fun. Animation is typically quicker. It used to be often an ensemble record, which is a lot more fun as an actor to work with an ensemble. But all animation and games is mostly at home and solo recorded since COVID. And the industry shifted to everyone was atomized and isolated, which makes it a little more challenging, but it's still doable if you've got a good script and a good director who knows what they want and a good voice actor.
So if you're doing multiple characters in a project, do you do them in succession, or do you like I'm saying, like a conversation, knock them out, or record each voice separately?
Well, that depends on the project. Sometimes they just, for their accounting and for how they put it together in the end, it's easier for them just to record one character than record the next character. But in the instance of the Bad Batch, as you may know, is that all of the Bad Batch simply talk to each other because we're all just sitting here on board and we're all listening to each other and we all can just talk. So it's all just, they're all there in the room because they're all here in this room, so to speak.
We're going to get to questions in a bit. I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
It's an amazing field to get into, voice acting. Someone who's trying to get into this field, how do they even start?
Great question. If you are interested in voice acting, I have a free website called iwanttobeavoiceactor.com. Everything that I've learned about acting and about voice acting, and really about being a creative entrepreneur and how do I approach that, I put that on my website just because I always have people asking me about that very question. How do I get into voice acting? What do I do? Where do I start? I've got everything that I have to say is on that site, and I keep adding to it, and so that's just kind of my putting back out there everything that I've learned, because as a voice actor, voice acting is a voluntary family, right? And voice actors, we're session players. We want more good people in on sessions. And so I'm not incentivized to put a wall around what I know and it's all for me and nobody else gets in. It's actually better if more people who are good and who are ready and right for this get on board and become involved with it. So I've made this site, iwanttobeavoiceactor.com, if you're curious.
How long has this site been up?
I think I started it about 10 years ago or so.
Have you gotten any good feedback from it?
I have a lot of people who've found it, and they say it's helped them, and yeah, a lot of gratitude for it. So that's very nice.
It's nice to share the gift. Let's get some questions. We'll start from this side of the room. Raise your hand.
Do you have any advice on how to develop different voices that sound distinct from your regular voice rather than you're just doing a funny voice?
That developing distinct characters is a function of acting, and it's also a function of improv. And so it's really a double-edged mission. There is, you got to become a good actor. That is to tell a story convincingly, authentically, honestly, from the words in front of you that will not sound like words when you read them. But then also to have within you a palette of characters and ideas to choose from that you can direct the instrument of your voice to create. So for me, learn how to act and learn how to improvise.
Let's get a couple more from the other side of the room.
Hi.
Hey.
One of my favorite roles you've ever played is actually Waddles from Gravity Falls.
People love Waddles.
He's adorable.
He's adorable. Thank you.
How in the world did you manage to make a pig's oink sound like the word Mabel? Because he does that in The Time Traveler's Pig, and how does he do that?
I have no recollection of that, but it's part of the fun of bending an animal-like sound into something that is either, it feels like an intelligible sentence, or sometimes like a word. It's you know, you find these things in the lonely moments of driving around in your car and just trying things in an uninhibited kind of a way. It's like part of the journey of being an actor, and my own weird version of being an actor is that you are actively exploring yourself, and you're actively trying things, and you're actively trying to mimic things that you hear, and then to see if you can use that and fashion that in a way to help tell a story or speak a sentence or use in a meaningful way. And if you can, then you place it in your little utility belt and you have it there ready for whenever that may come up. So, right, in that case, you know, they ask me to do something that sounds ridiculous or impossible, and the answer to do it is you just try it and you find your way to making that real. I don't know how else to put it. Yeah.
One more question from that side of the room, and then we'll move over here.
More questions.
With the conclusion of Bad Batch, is there any chance of us seeing a further story with Echo and Rex?
Well, I would say there's always a chance. I mean, if I knew, if I told you, I would be assassinated right now. There'd be a laser on my forehead, and I would go away. But in all honesty, I don't know. To me, those stories cry out to be told. What happens to Echo? What happens to Wolf? What happens to Cody? What are these guys up to after or in between the things that we've seen? And the wonderful thing about the Star Wars universe as they're exploring it right now is that we've seen that they can go forwards, they can go backwards, they can go sideways. And they can also change the different styling of how the story is told as well. So I hope that we will again see these characters and tell more of these stories. But I can't tell you anything specifically because I really don't know. But I would be the last person in the great creative chain of Lucas Animation to hear about it. So I'm not the person to ask. You want to ask Dave Filoni.
Let's move over to this side of the room. Got 3 here, and then we'll move back over and get these 3.
So first of all, I love Clone Wars and Bad Batch, and like my favorite arcs in the entire series for Bad Batch was Crosshair, and in Clone Wars, of course, it was Fives, and on the Umbara arc, and his arc where he finds Order 66. What was it like getting into the mindset of just that entire arc?
Well, it's like nothing I've been asked to do, and it's a very odd and wonderful thing to try to paint a story that is affecting and that's heartbreaking and that's real, but to play all the characters in the scenes. I don't really know how to describe it. It's been the challenge and the satisfaction of a lifetime, I think, of my career to do these things. I don't really know if I'll be asked to do them again. I sure hope so. But yeah, the Umbara arc in particular, that was kind of tough. That was, to bring that one home. If you're familiar, it's a friendly fire situation, really heartbreaking, with clones killing clones, brothers killing brothers. You only realize that later, and that they've been deceived, and it's this really traumatic, awful situation for these troops. And that was particularly difficult because it was not only traumatic from that standpoint, but there was also a lot of screaming and yelling in all of the dying and the carnage and the sadness. So that was a tough one.
And another question front.
Hi, so with the conclusion of the Bad Batch, I think Hunter's last conversation with Omega was very touching. It touched all of our hearts. I'm curious, what would Wrecker and Crosshair say to Omega before she went off on her own?
I'd say, bye, I don't want you to go. And I might get emotional.
And Crosshair, I think, would say very little. Perhaps embrace her And that would be that.
Thank you. Another one down front, then we're going to head to the other side of the room.
Hi, I have three really quick questions. So, first one, did you consult with war veterans for the Clone Wars series? Second one, did you use action figures and Legos to like practice, or do you do that often? And third question, I think Ashley Eckstein mentioned once where they would be working on voices together and you'd be in your corner screaming, just like you said, for those scenes. Did you ever work with them, like collaborated with them, recording voices all at the same time, or did you do that separately from the Clone Wars cast?
Okay, that was a lot to wade through. So
Yeah.
First, did I consult with veterans? Is that your question?
Yes.
I did not. But in the case of, for instance, our head writer, Jen, in The Bad Batch, she is ex-military. And so there's a lot of authenticity to that. And I've had a lot of troops really connect with the show because of that. But from an actor standpoint, for me, all I need is the human reality that's playing out on the words in front of me. And what was the second question?
Do you play with like action figures or Legos?
My action figures are in my mind. And the third question?
Did you ever work with the Clone Wars cast, like record lines at the same time as them, or did you always record separately?
The Clone Wars series, when we originally started it, we record as an ensemble. So we were all together, and that was part of the great fun and the satisfaction of that. Then with Bad Batch, it was only, I think, 1 or 2 episodes that we recorded actually together with me and Michelle. And then COVID hit, and then after that, it was all recorded separately and remotely.
All right, head over to the other side of the room. Lisa has a couple questions there. Way in the back.
You mentioned a little earlier about the Bad Batch and the clones. Regarding that, trying to pinpoint 4 more distinct voices between an already recognizable voice, was that difficult, easier, or about the same to finding any other voice? Because you got to find new distinctions in the same voice that's been known for many years.
I only caught part of that. Once more?
How difficult was it for you to find 4 more distinct voices in an already distinct voice, such as the clones?
Yeah, the way that played out was fairly quickly and improvisationally when we first recorded the Bad Batch arc, which originally was not animated. All they had was an animatic, which I didn't even see. But it's like George Lucas has this idea for this kind of A-team of clones, but they're different. They're clones, but they're enhanced, right? And so pretty quickly with Dave, I just kind of workshopped my ideas of what these guys might sound like so that they seemed related, but that they were quite different from each other. And we came up with that pretty quick. And then it actually was easier for me to get through the script with them because they're all so different from each other. It's actually a little bit more of a trick of concentration to keep the clones separate as opposed to the Bad Batch, who are much more different in distinct in voices.
Okay, next question on that side of the room.
Hi, I wanted to thank you for voicing Frankie the dog in the Jumpstart series, one of my childhood games.
You're welcome, and I have no recollection of that whatsoever.
So my question is, how'd you get the role voice in Frankie and Jumpstart?
Well, I probably just auditioned for it, and they gave it to me. That's just like with most anything. Sometimes they'll ask me in and they trust me to do something that works, and it always works out, and that's that. But I still audition for stuff, and back then I would audition for everything. So that was it.
One more from that side of the room, and then we'll move over here.
Yes? What's the hardest voice that you've done?
Well, there's 2 ways to look at it. I mean, the most difficult voice is like if I'm the main monster, and they have to, it's an episode about battling that monster. And so he's a really mad monster and a really large monster, and so I'm doing that for, half an hour. So that's really hard. It's fun, but it's hard. But for me, the greatest challenge for me was to do what I didn't think that I could do, which is a more straight-ahead character, like the clones, where that's just a straight-ahead, dramatic, normal human character. For me, normal human is challenging. The weird stuff, that feels familiar. That's just me.
Okay, let's head over to this side of the room and got a couple questions here.
Yes?
All right. Yeah. I have a question about, do you do the Perry voice like multiple times for Perry the Platypus? So they sound the same. I'm trying to do you like record one, they just like play it hundreds of times, or do you like record it multiple times?
Well, the wonderful thing about the Perry voice is they showed me to start. Dan and Swampy, the show creators, said, here's the character, here's the creature, and we just want him to make a single sound. So just make 3 sounds, and we'll choose one. So I went, okay, like a or, and they said, okay, thanks. We'll pick one of those. Thank you. And that was the end of the session. And then they proceeded to reprint the one they chose in all the episodes, which that's the most amount of money for the least amount of work I've ever done.
Okay, another one right over here.
I was wondering if you could talk about working with Dave Filoni, especially on Clone Wars episodes that were focused on the clones.
Well, Dave Filoni's great. I mean, he's George Lucas's right-hand man, and he very much trained at the side of the master. And George Lucas was directly involved with making the Clone Wars, and even the original Bad Batch. And so the wonderful Dave has a real familiarity and love of Star Wars, and also about how George Lucas goes about creating and doing that. And what you want as an actor more than anything is a creative, other than a really good script, is the creative director knowing what they want. And he very much did. The team had already blocked it out, and they'd really figured out exactly how it needs to feel. And so that's a real pleasure to work with. It was always great working with him on all the stuff that we did. He's a very generous, open, creative Star Wars lover and director. He's great.
All right, we have one more question here, and we have time for 3 more on the other side. Nice and loud.
All right, my question for you is this. You've obviously auditioned for a lot of different roles. Can you tell us maybe about one that got away, where you're like, I really wanted to be able to do this particular character or this particular voice, and it just didn't happen?
Because I normally think of it this way. An audition is like a lotto ticket that the universe scratches off for you. And if you win it, then you hear about it. Otherwise, you just forget about it. And so I normally let go of things. I'm trying to think of something that I really, really wanted but didn't get. Okay. Yeah. Actually, when they were doing the Star Wars, what do they call them? The most recent Star Wars features. They're not the prequels. They're not the original ones. What do you call them? Okay. Well, anyway, they were coming into the home stretch of making the first one. And little BB-8, they wanted to do the sounds for that. And so they brought me in. It was late in the post-production process. And I think it was just a bit of a Hail Mary attempt to try to take it a different direction. And I gave them some ideas from some things that I wanted to do, but they ended up going with, I'm pretty sure they had the director moving his fingers around on a touchpad making the sounds. And because they'd already temped that in, I think they were used to the feel of that, and they stayed with that. But I think I could have done it better. And so that was a bit of a big fish that got away. But ultimately, that's just being an actor. Is you create what you love, something you think works, something that you hope that they love too, and then you just let it go. You let them decide what they're going to decide because your role is done. And to worry about that, to bring that home, it's just going to make your day miserable. So you just put it out there, and you wait and see how it goes. That's it.
So we got time for 3 more questions on that side of the room.
Yes.
Thank you for taking my question. You mentioned improv. You're training several times throughout the afternoon. How often do you get a script and you say, I can change this line. This is better. Do you sneak it in and hopefully they like it, or don't have that freedom?
Well, that depends on the show you're working. If you're working on an animated Fox sitcom, you're probably going to be reading the words as written and maybe as read to you by the writer. But in most shows and even most games, they're open to this being better. If you can bring something that's better. The objective is not to do something that makes me look good or that I think is just a fun idea. But the idea for me as an actor is always, how can I make this better? And part of that is with how you flavor the read that you're giving of the acting, but also part of it is what you do to sprinkle in the pre-life and the afterlife and the extra sounds and efforts and vocal sounds that you make to craft this into something that lives and that feels perfect for the moment of the story that's being told. And so acting always has an element of improvisation. You don't just do the same thing 3 times or over and over again. To me, that's dead, and it becomes very stale very quickly. And so you not only have to liven up your read, but you're actively looking for fresh ideas and nuance, and sometimes different words, or a retelling, or a flipping of a sentence, or adding a comma, or erasing a comma. And if you can do that in a way that convinces them that what you're doing is better than what they have in their head, then they'll take it. Just so long as it doesn't threaten them. You're not doing it in a way to threaten them or to threaten their idea, but to make it better. That's the key.
Okay, let's get 2 more questions.
Hello. So you mentioned earlier, hi, I'm over here. Hi. Hello.
Oh, there you are, yes.
Hi. So you mentioned earlier that you took some lessons in opera, and I was wondering if you could show us some opera that you might have learned?
Well, I mean, I didn't do it to become an opera singer, but he had opera training. And to learn to sing correctly, it's something that you can apply to live performing or singing in a musical or performing like I was doing at Epcot Center in front of crowds. So that the place that I put my voice isn't up here, or I'm not pushing it, or I'm not like that. But you're doing it in a way that there's resonance and power to it. And if you want, you can open it up pretty loud so that people can hear you, whether you have a microphone or not. And so you can express yourself and be understood, but in a way that's not damaging your voice. So that comes in handy in all kinds of ways, whether or not you're speaking or performing or singing for a large crowd, or if you're working in a voiceover booth. But just to do it in a way that's, there's a place, there's like this little shelf in the back of your behind your tongue that is a great place to deflect the sound or the song off of. So for instance, even when you're screaming, when you're yelling, it's a kind of controlled singing that you're doing, so that you're not wiping your voice out.
Okay, we got time for 1 more. Dee, you're headed back to your table to sign after this, if I'm not mistaken?
After this, I think I'm doing photo ops for like 5 or 10 minutes, and
Okay.
then I'm going back to signing. Yes.
Awesome. So if you didn't have a chance for your question, please visit his table. Let's get with the last question.
Hi. So earlier you were talking about the Bad Batch, how each character has a very distinct voice. I was wondering, which one was your favorite voice to perform?
Well, my favorite voice to perform is also my least favorite to perform, because Wrecker wrecks my voice. But I like to be Wrecker because he likes to blow things up.
I mean, I want to be Wrecker. I am not Wrecker. But there's part of him in me that is there. I really love being all of them. It's really, they're all such appealing good guys. Even Crosshair, who really was my favorite character to portray in The Bad Batch because of his story, is someone that you want to be. You know, if there's something that you've missed, or that you've a choice that you've made that was wrong, or someone that you did the wrong thing at the wrong time, but that you find it within yourself to move through that and to transform and to change, that's a wonderful story. And so even with a grumpy old fellow like Crosshair, there's something relatable and appealing about the guy to me. So I like them all very much, but it sure is fun to be Wrecker.
We'd like to thank you so much for coming out and
Thank
sharing your
you.
talents with us.
Thank you, guys.
D. Bradley Baker.
Thank you. I'll see you at the table or in passing.
Good soldiers follow orders.
Thank you.